Hi, this is a FM guide updated for the Silverfrost patch. I'll go over Ice Rain, Dragonchar, Blazing Beam, Wicked Twin, and Dual Drag, and then badges at the end. First, we'll start with some basic information about how skills work, but I won't go too deeply into detail about it. GM stands for Grandmaster. Stacking DPS skills give them a damage increase per stack of GM. The more the better. If the book has a GM buff, stacking books at certain thresholds will also provide you with the specified benefits. All books can be stacked, but only some will have GM-related buffs. Leggy books are worth 12 on the initial activation, and 18 per every subsequent copy. Purples are worth 6, and blues are worth 2. Without a leggy, if you have one copy of the purple or blue version, the GM value is 0, but every other book after that will be worth 6 or 2 respectively. Here's an example. I have 3 dragonchar leggies. The first leggy is worth 12, but the second and third are worth 18 each. On the other hand, I have 1 Wicked Twin leggy. The first leggy is worth 12, and all the purple books are worth 6 each. However, if I remove the leggy, the first purple book will be worth 0, but the rest will be worth 6 each. You can have a total of 18 books stacked on your character. Theoretically, you can attain a maximum of 318 GM by stacking 18 leggy copies of a skill. In practice, this is impossible because you need at least 2 utility skills to make FM rotation play smoothly. Anyway, GM thresholds are 18, 30, and 48. Try to aim for more than 48 GM on DPS skills since every copy will provide a significant damage boost. Now let's move on to the actual builds. Feel free to skip through this video for specific builds that you want. First, let's go over the general books you will need for an Ice Rain build. You will need Ice Rain, Force Blast, Cold Snap, Snowball or Massive Snowball, and the Cold Snap Mystic Badge. Basically, each one of these skills reduces the cooldown of another, with Cold Snap being the skill that boosts Ice Rain damage and decreases focus consumption. You could say that each skill snowballs into one another. You'll also need Blazing Palm and Frost Palm at the blue or purple tier. The default left and right click are very slow and don't allow for anti-canceling. At blue, each book has an added description that reads increased attack speed. Purple Blazing Palm also detonates on 5 stacks of Ember, which gives you a small amount of additional damage. Blue Frost Palm removes the focus consumption of earlier books, which helps with making the rotation more comfortable and smooth. Purple Frost Palm isn't necessary to get, but it's certainly nice to have if you want SF boost and stat padding. Your rotation is as follows: Cold Snap, RT2, Snowball, and then Force Blast. Cold Snap boosts Ice Rain, Snowball decreases Cold Snap's 30-second cooldown, and Force Blast decreases Snowball's 18-second cooldown. This badge decreases Cold Snap's cooldown by 18 seconds. That's on top of the 8 or 12-second cooldown reduction the skillbook itself provides. You can use Snowball instead of Massive Snowball, but you'll be missing out on Massive Snowball's cooldown reduction. For Snowball, blue or purple tier works. For Massive Snowball, it can be considered overkill if you use purple, but I recommend using it if you can, since Cold Snap will effectively always be up when you need a refresh Ice Rain boost. Both Snowball and Massive Snowball have the same cooldown and the damage is negligible. Purple books are becoming more and more cheap as well as easier to obtain, so if you happen to get the purple version, by all means use it, but don't sweat it if you can't get it, since it's far more important to focus on Ice Rain GM stacking. There isn't much of a difference between Cold Snap at the purple and blue tier. For the purpose of this build, either will do, but the purple book will inflate your SF a bit more if you want to pad your stats. You can also use the green version of this book, but you will lose out on the focus regen blue and above gives. Otherwise, any version of the book will boost Ice Rain, and Cold Snap always has a base 30-second cooldown. Force Blast. This book starts at the blue tier, and each tier will reduce Snowball cooldown by 5, 10, and 18 seconds. You should at least use the blue book, but purple will make for a more comfortable flow of the rotation. Leggy Force Blast is so troll, and I genuinely feel bad for anyone who gets it. Snowball has a base cooldown of 18 seconds, so Leggy Force Blast is so unnecessary. Lastly, if you have Leggy Ice Rain, you can remove Cold Snap, Snowball, and Force Blast from your rotation since Ice Rain will always be boosted. At blue and purple tiers, your rotation will be ZX1 RT2, but at Leggy it'll just be RT2. This doesn't account for Wicked Twin or Dual Dragon hybrid builds, which I'll go over later. There are only 2 books you need for a Leggy Dragonchar build, Dragonchar and Wildfire. If you don't have Dragonchar, chances are you'll need Impact and several focus regen skills like Balefire, Cold Snap, or Meteor Shower. Naturals guide more or less covers Dchar at the blue tier, so I'll go over Dchar at the purple and Leggy tier. Up to purple tier, Dchar costs 3 focus to cast. It decreases focus consumption at max boost, but 3 focus is still a lot for a DPS skill. The boost dragonchar refers to in its description is only obtained from using D-char repeatedly or using impact green tier and above. As a side note, maximum boost is interrupted when you don't use dragonchar fast enough or use other skills which interrupt your RT2 rotation, in other words, Wicked Twin. This focus issue is why people often say that D-char only really works at purple above, and really only at leggy tier, since the focus cost is decreased permanently from 3 to 2. You also need Blazing Palm and Frost Palm at the blue or purple tier. The default left and right click are very slow and don't allow for anti-canceling. At blue, each book has an added description that reads increased attack speed. Purple Blazing Palm also detonates on 5 stacks of Ember, which gives you a small amount of additional damage. Blue Frost Palm removes the focus consumption of earlier books, which helps with making the rotation more comfortable and smooth. Purple Frost Palm isn't necessary to get, but it's certainly nice to have if you want SF boost and stat padding. Also, leggy D-char is just cooler than purple and below. Unlike Ice Ray and BB, which do not have significant visual differences between tiers, leggy D-char has golden dragons. It's super cool, although it gets kinda annoying after a while because I genuinely can't see the enemy or any loot drops through it, and not to mention the visual effects still show up even on the lowest setting. But hey, you can get to flex on all your friends, glannies, and randos because it's painfully obvious that you have a leggy. Wildfire is essential to the build since it applies burn on up to 3 enemies. Burn is important since it's what boosts your damage. It's one of the few skills that apply burn besides Balefire, Fiendfire, and Lego Dual Dragon. Granted that you don't have focus issues between Wildfire and Balefire, always take Wildfire if possible. Wildfire has a 9-second cooldown while Balefire has an 18-second cooldown. This means that you will almost always have burn guaranteed on an enemy. If you suffer from focus issues, use any combination of Balefire, Cold Snap, or Meteor Shower. Balefire is probably the most desirable of the 3 since it applies burn for 10 seconds and has an 18-second cooldown compared to Meteor Shower and Cold Snap, which both have a 30-second cooldown. For the record, Meteor Shower has its own hybrid build with badges that I won't get into the weeds about just yet. Meteor Shower is a cool skill that when paired with Ice Rain looks very beautiful, and honestly I'd run it if I was a mildly sweaty meta slave. Otherwise, Meteor Shower is a handy skill since it regens up to 5 focus on an enemy with burn. Cold Snap is traditionally used in Ice Rain builds, but it's useful for focus regen in general as well. Like Meteor Shower, Cold Snap regens up to 5 focus minus the burn condition. Impact serves 2 purposes for D-char. It boosts D-char and it detonates Ember stacks. There's 2 scenarios in which you would no longer need Impact and can free up a slot. 1. You have leggy D-char and don't need a boost D-char anymore. 2. You have Purple Blazing Palm which automatically detonates Embers upon 5 stacks. If you can fulfill both conditions, feel free to remove Impact from your build. You could remove Impact with Purple D-char, but it's kinda monka if you do, since it's one less way of boosting D-char. Lastly, rotation. Your core rotation is RT2 like every other build. If you're running Impact, weave in 1 every time you get 5 Ember stack. Cast Wildfire off cooldown, and in fact, you will want to open with Wildfire as well. If you have focus issues, use any of the focus regen skills I mentioned off cooldown 1 at a time while you perform your core rotation. Blazing Beam is always paired with Wicked Twin Dragon or Dual Dragon. Even though Wicked Twin Dragon is meta and Dual Dragon is great for util, Ice Rain and D-char can stand on their own mainly because they're AoE. On the other hand, BB is not particularly viable since it's a single target skill and requires either Wicked Twin or Dual Dragon most content. As a side note, currently, BB is the highest damage dealing skill of the skills on the 2 key. D-char comes second and Ice Rain comes third. This contrasts Moonwater Patch where Ice Rain was king and Fire Spec was abysmal in comparison. Moving on, Blazing Beam Wicked Twin Dragon has the same rotation as D-char. Cast Wildfire, then RT2 spam with Wicked Twin cast off cooldown. The only difference between the 2 builds is LMB. BB is the only skill of the 3 that can take advantage of Infernal Blow's effects since BB has a built-in Ember detonation at 30 GM. Running B-Palm isn't a bad choice, but having BB detonate is preferred since the damage scales with BB's GM stacks. As an added bonus, BB doesn't consume as much focus as D-char and Ice Rain, so the focus regen B-Palm gives isn't necessary. BB with dual drags requires you to run Meteor Shower and Fiendfire. You also need at least 30 GM on BB so you can drop Impact, since 30 GM BB also does what Impact would do by giving an instant cast of Fiendfire after detonating 5 Ember stacks. Fiendfire needs to be at least blue tier since it gives you a second instant cast after the first use. Combined with BB's 30 GM, you can cast it instantly the first time, and then a second time. If possible, use the purple version of this book because the second cast will deal additional damage. You also need the Infernal Mystic Badge or Sacred Mystic Badge, which will grant a double cast of Meteor Shower when you use Fiendfire. The reason why Fiendfire and Meteor Shower is essential for a BB dual drag build is to compensate for the lack of damage from not running Wicked Twin. Dual drag deals up to 18 times your AP, Fiendfire deals up to 27 times your AP, and Meteor Shower deals up to 22 times your AP. Wicked Twin deals 40 times your AP twice because of the free instant cast. Dual Drag, Fiendfire, and Meteor Shower combined should deal as much DPS on top of the 5 stacks of bleed Dual Drag provides. One of the main issues of this build is that you have to wait for Fiendfire to come off cooldown, which is 45 seconds. There's no cooldown reduction for this skill, only Meteor Shower and or Dual Drags, depending on the Mystic Badge you run. Also, unlike other hybrid builds, it's recommended that you stack Dual Drag to 48 GM, and then stack as much beam as possible as that's your main source of damage. If you somehow have focus issues for whatever reason, refer to the timestamp on screen for skillbooks to help with this issue. Rotation. Open with Wildfire or Balefire, Meteor Shower, RT2 until Ember Detonation, then Fiendfire once the skill glows. Cast Fiendfire twice, and then end the rotation with Meteor Shower again as Fiendfire resets its cooldown. Dual Dragons is my favorite of the two due to the util it offers. At the purple tier, it applies 5 stacks of bleed and has no cast time. At leggy tier, the 18-second cooldown is decreased to 12 and it applies burn for 10 seconds. As a result, you can remove Wildfire from your build and either stack another Dual Dragons or DPS book, or use Skyburn Knockdown. I love Dual Dragons so much because of the bleed and no cast time. As a side note, I generally couldn't play Warlock or any of the DPS and healer classes in Final Fantasy, because I hate standing still to cast skills. As an added benefit to running Dual Dragon, if you run the skill, you'll never have to recruit Summoners/Bleed Pref in the World Chat ever again. No more 10-minute recruit times because you won't bleed. Instead, it'll be an 8-minute recruit time because you still want Hammer and Dandelion. However, you'll be hard-pressed to find a Dual Dragon user in the wild since Wicked Twin does significantly more damage than Dual Dragons. You can think of Dual Dragons as a util/raid skill, while Wicked Twin is for the meta slaves who chase high damage numbers. Wicked Twin does so much more damage than any other skill in the class that anyone who runs 48 GM leggy are Wicked Twin users and not Ice Rain/Dchar/BB players. Technically, you could say people who run Wicked Twin are a bit selfish since they're essentially turning down free bleed sacks, and even an extra slot that Wildfire takes up in place of a knockdown for more DPS. Not to mention, Wicked Twin suffers from cast times, which means FMs must be more deliberate with their positioning and timing during boss attack patterns and phases. Anyway, the logistics. You can run Dual Dragon comfortably at the purple tier. 0 GM is fine, but hitting the standard GM checkpoints are nice. For Wicked Twin, it's mandatory that you have at least one leggy copy since it grants you 1 free instant cast of Wicked Twin on hit, and Wicked Twin's cooldown is reduced from 30 seconds to 18 seconds. You should also stack Wicked Twin as much as possible past 48 GM because each GM stack gives you a DPS boost. Normally you would stack as much of Ice Rain, Dchar, and Blazing Beam as possible, but Wicked Twin changes how you stack. First, you should prioritize stacking Wicked Twin before stacking your 2 skill. Second, you will want to stack your 2 skill to 48 and then stack Wicked Twin as much as possible. Most builds have a best in slot badge. Ice Rain should run the Snowball Mystic badge, Blazing Beam Dual Dragon should run the Inferno badge, and Wicked Twin builds should run the Dragon Blaze badge. Dchar is the only one that doesn't have a best in slot Mystic badge, but if you run it with Wicked Twin or Dual Dragon, you should obviously use the Dragon Blaze badge. Of course, this only applies to Virtuous Mystic badges and below. At Sacred and below, you're forced to choose between Ice/BB or Dual Dragon and Wicked Twin. At Sacred and Dawncrest tier, all effects get combined into one badge. This solves the issue for hybrid builds when you run Ice Rain and Wicked Twin or Dual Dragon or Blazing Beam and Dual Dragon. Soul badges are a little less important than Mystic badges. Mystic badges provide cooldown reduction effects and influence the flow of your rotation. Soul badges provide additional damage for your main skills, which is nice and all, but not as crucial as Mystic badges. Every major damage dealing skill has a soul badge for it. Dchar uses a Dchar badge, Ice Rain uses the Ice Rain badge, and so on. Note that at the Sacred tier, only the 2 skills plus Inferno Meteor Shower are included and not Wicked Twin or Dual Dragon. In the past, some FMs used to rock a +9 Virtuous, but eventually I just went with the Dawncrest badges because they're better. That's more or less it, so thank you for watching.